Welcome to I Read This Book with Chris. It is me, Chris, and I read a book. I read The Great Time Machine Hoax by Keith Laumer. I'll be discussing this book while drinking a Boulevardier, which I most definitely pronounced wrong. The Great Time Machine Hoax, a wild adventure backwards, forwards, sideways, through time. It's a Galaxy science fiction novel. I don't know that I have very many books published by Galaxy. See that? Galaxy was a science fiction magazine, so it makes sense that they also published, but I have not seen that. Is it by Award Books? Is that the publisher? It looks like it. It was copyright of 1963 and 1964. Cover is quite strange. It's an hourglass with a bunch of people, naked bodies. I don't know why. Yeah, it has nothing at all to do with the story. But let me tell you about this here story. It starts off with Chester going to his family's property. Was his great-great-grandfather, who had died 100 years before. It had been held up in lawsuits. No one had any access to it. And finally, it got clear through, and it became his outright. He goes there, and as far as he knows, it is a roadside attraction circus place that has a house on the property and a crazy mechanism in the basement. Because they haven't been able to figure out ownership for a while, and because of the Tri-D, which is a three-dimensional television set, people are not going to this roadside attraction, and no one's been able to manage it, so it's gone from a huge roadside attraction down to one person who's running it, which is Case. He's basically doing everything. So Case and Chester are trying to figure out what's going on, how to save this roadside attraction. And the biggest issue is the estate tax. Basically, the IRS is coming, and they're gonna force sale of the property if they don't come up with, I believe it's $1 million. I didn't say maybe they said the amount, maybe they didn't, but a lot of money. And basically the sale of the property is, all the money is going to get eaten up by the IRS. So they're trying to figure out what exactly to do, how to save it. They throw around a couple ideas. And they go in Chester says, hey, let's go down and see this crazy machine that my great-grandfather built. So they go down into the wine cellar, grab a couple of bottles, start talking to this computer. Apparently, the great-grandfather's idea was to give this computer access to all knowledge, all information ever. So they're like, well, ask it some questions. So they ask it a question or two, it gets the answer right. And they ask another question. A secret door pops open. Apparently, it's bigger than they thought it was. There's a secret room. They go inside the secret room. The computer has reveals to them it basically became sentient, realized that it wasn't able to do everything that he had wanted because of lack of computer space. So it hooked itself into the market, stole a little bit of money to get started, then manipulated the market in order to make lots of money, in order to basically hollow out the entire underside of the United States of America and build in underneath it a giant computer. And over the 100 years, obviously technology's gotten better, computers have gotten smaller, so it's got every bit of information that ever exists. And so Chase and Chester are trying to figure out what's going on here. How do we figure out how to use this computer that no one knew existed, or at least had no idea that it was as good or important as it is, to make money in order to save this roadside attraction. So they start throwing around ideas. They throw around the idea, hey, because they had previously asked, what does Chase's great-great-great-grandfather look like? And so the computer gave them an example, said, oh, he looked something like this. They said, we actually found his bones, and, He's definitely your great-great-great-grandfather if you follow just the paternal line, back 1,000 years. And they're like, that's crazy. What else can you do? Can you make things super realistic? Can you make us something to compete with this tri-D, this three-dimensional television? And the computer's like, yeah, I can do that. And shows them something that's more realistic. And they're like, let's make it even more realistic, more realistic. And they go make something that's so realistic you can smell it, you can taste it, you can see it. Go back, show us the dinosaurs. Except then a dinosaur comes and gets really close, and they're like, oh no! And the computer turned it off. The computer turned it off. Chester thinks, no, this computer brought a dinosaur back to life. Case is like, I don't know about that. Like, okay, let's try it again. Let's bring the caveman. So they go and they bring the caveman scene to life. They go, they see, oh, this looks pretty realistic. We see some people who are looking like cavemen, but they're noticing us. At which point, still thinking about how can they turn this into a business, and having a voice coming out of nowhere doesn't seem very exciting. Hey, can you make us a speaker so we can, see where this voice is coming from? And so the computer takes them literally and makes them a naked woman in order to be connected to the computer and speak for the computer. They name this speaker Jeannie. So Chase, Chester, and Jeannie then go look at how realistic this caveman scene is and accidentally get trapped in the caveman past, captured by cavemen. They wake up, they're in cages made out of branches high up in the tree, and the cavemen come and see Case, who has been working at this roadside attraction for many years. They bring him down and have him fight with a giant. Because these are cavemen who don't have know any martial arts, and Case been trained in a little bit of martial arts, he's able to defeat this guy. At which point, while he is distracting the cavemen, Chester and Jeannie, using a pocket knife, manage to escape. Case starts juggling, to distract them, showing them all of his fancy moves. They try to figure out how can we save him without distracting the cavemen. Then the cavemen see that they're gone, start chasing after them. They run, and they say, computer, take us away. The computer takes them away, tries to bring them back to their home, but they can't. They end up in this strange future world. It's a city. Yeah. Brings them to the strange future city. Jeannie is still naked. Chester is wearing clothes that obviously do not fit into this strange new world that they don't know anything about. The police see them, chase after them. They run away, manage to buy some clothes, opening up a credit card, get some clothes on Jeannie, at which point the police find them again. They are arrested. Chester escapes, runs back out, and the one place where they know the computer can hear them, the rug and chair which the computer has brought from the original study. Chester makes it back to this rug and the chair and says, take me away, computer, and he is brought into a different future world. He tries to figure out what's going on. The world seems to be run by strange Superman philosophers who are in perfect health, are sophists basically, always thinking about philosophy, trying to figure out what's going on in the world, trying to understand it. They have no idea where this rug and this chair came from. And that's the only way that Chester knows to access the computer to bring him back. And they say, hey, guy, I don't know what you're doing, but you have to stay away from this. And we're going to do some tests, try to figure out where this chair and this rug came from. Jumps ahead 2 weeks. He's still stuck into this world. They've found a place for him to stay, but he's not allowed to do much of anything. They're like, oh, you should get a job. He's like, I don't want a job. I need to get back to my stuff. That's not your stuff. We don't know it's your stuff. He tries arguing with them. At which point, one of these philosophers comes up to him and says, hey, in all this strange things, and we'll give you back your rug and your chair, but we have the chance to run an experiment. We don't know where you came from. We don't know anything about you. But we can tell you obviously have not been trained by the way that we've been trained, either philosophically or physically. And we think that we can, in a short period of time, put you in a university designed specifically for you to try to figure out how we can train up someone who's not trained, even though you're fully grown, make you a physically fit specimen and a philosophically sound, so you can think in the way that we do, and we can get you trained and educated. And he's like, and if I do that, you'll let me get back to my rug in my chair? And they're like, yes. And he says, okay, fine. He'd already been stuck there for a few weeks. And he said, if this is the only way, I'll do it. Montage scene. They train him philosophically. They train him in fencing, in wrestling, and to get over his fear of heights, to get over his fear of all sorts of things. And basically they train him non-stop for 10 months. At which point they're like, hey, you've been training for 10 months, you're getting a lot better. We have a little test for you. He says, okay, I'll take this test. I have a whole lot of a choice. They say, okay, go down into this forest. And, there's a path. You can take the path. You cannot take the path. Go see what you can see and come back. He says, okay, I'll do that. He goes. He sees a bunch of traps that have been set up for him. He notices them all, manages to, move around them, clear his own way. He comes to a cliff. One of the things they've been training him on is to get over his fear of heights and to do high diving from extremely high distance into a 4x4 pool. It's deep enough to, so he doesn't die. And he sees down there, oh, this is obviously, what they came to have me do. He sees a pool, it's natural. It's, it's a small area for him to aim. But he thinks there's been traps this whole way. He looks down the side of the cliff. He could climb down it, but at the bottom there's barbed wire, enough of it that he wouldn't be able to get down. And he's like, okay, well, they want me to jump in there. He sees the trap. He throws a rock, a giant rock. The rock gets caught up in a net. He's like, aha, I see that. There's nothing you can do. They've implemented basically a walkie-talkie behind his ear. And they're like, oh, we see you got caught in the trap. Don't worry, we'll be here to free you. And he's like, you didn't free me. It's this test. They thought that, they did, but they did it. They got me, but they didn't. He's moving back through the woods, except the woods are on fire. He tries to figure out how he can get around and get back to the city, but a hunter comes and captures him. This hunter is from the lowlands and says, hey, what are you doing in my woods? You are a spy here to see what's going on here. We're going to capture you. This hunter brings him down into the ruins of a town where he was trained is philosophically sound, well-fit people who are carrying on civilization. The person who captures him is using a bow and arrow. Basically, they're like, we are the free men here. We're not going to do whatever society wants of us. But they are living off of found food, a little bit of hunting and gathering. They're living in houses that have been abandoned, but they're not doing anything to upkeep the houses. They're falling apart. They're speaking in some strange, broken, redneck, Scottish dialect, a little confused, and he goes, after been training for 10 months to become a Superman. There's a whole montage scene, so he's well trained because there's a montage scene, even though it's a book. Tries to figure out what's going on. They're like, hey, we'll have a feast. They throw a feast for him. He seems to realize what's going on, that the guy who captured him was the leader, but there's another guy who wants to take over. So he sets up the palace, which is, what's the guy's name? This leader that captures them. Bandon. So this leader, Bandon, and Chester, are sleeping in a house. Chester has set up some traps. And Grizz, this wannabe, is coming in saying, hey, you guys are working together. The Bandon and the spy, Chester, from the Highlanders. You're coming here to try to figure out what's going on and to ruin everything for us. Chester, using his smartness, that he's been educated, and his superior skills, now that he's this crazy Superman, is able to, time after time, fight off Grizz's attacks. Comes in, saying everything, saying how Chester and Bandon are working together to ruin this Freeman and their little world. Chester knocks out Grizz, but knows there's a gang of people outside and says, hey, they're going after you too. They're going to kill you. I'm going to escape. You can follow me if you want. Otherwise, you do what you want to do. They escape up this cliff. And once they get to the top of the cliff, they realize it's not a cliff of a mountain that they can go and find a way down. It's a butte. So basically, all sides are straight cliff. well, no, we're stuck up here. What do we do? They try to figure out, how can we do this? How can we escape? At which point they decide, because Chester, when he was a kid, built a bunch of model airplanes and gliders, says, we're going to make a glider. So they're able to, using some of the material they brought and some stuff they found up there, create a big wooden glider. It takes them a few days, and just as they built it, as they are about to come off, they realize Grizz and his band of gangs has come up to the top. They're coming over. This whole time they've been shooting arrows up there, but they've built a platform. They take a big rock, they throw it on the platform. Other people are coming up other sides. They go, they take the glider, the glider, Chester Bandon, come off this big butte. They find some, what's it called? Thermal lifts, whatever it's called, where heat is rising. And they're able to use the glider to make it up, high enough. They then fly back, or glide back, into the town. At which point Chester, now that he's trained and knows that he can take on guys, fights off the people who are protecting his rug and his chair. He gets there, tells the computer, hey, bring me back to Jeannie. At which point him and the chair and the rug are thrown back to the city that they had left. There was a police cordon around the area where the chair and the rug were, and when he had left, he was expecting it to be gone because he was in this weird city for 10 months. He comes back, the police cordon's still there. He's trying to figure out what's going on. Different because he's been trained, so they don't realize right away. They don't realize that he's the same guy. And he's like, I've been here for 10 months. Let's see if I can figure out where Jeannie went. After 10 months, who knows? He goes, tries to talk to the police and tries to convince them and that he's some police commissioner. They know he's not. But they humor him just to get him into the police station. Once they get him in there, they try to arrest him. He figures out that Jeannie is still in jail. He manages to fight them off. Gets a caterpillar, one of those construction machines. Knows that she's in the north end of the jail. He goes there with this caterpillar, calls out for Jeannie. She shows which room she's in. He knocks down the wall, hit Chester and Jeannie, then escape in this caterpillar through the police cordon, hop on the chair and rug. Bam! Brought. They're like, take us back to where Case was. Computer says, all right, they bring him back. At which point, they find Case. Realize that, 10 months had passed for Chester in the future city. Only a couple of hours had passed for Jeannie in the strange city that she was in. Over 25 years had passed for Case. He had, using his knowledge of the future, knowing a little bit, he's able to get them to smelt some iron, get them into the Iron Age to get some axes, figures out how to make soap, cleans them all up, teaches them how to fish, how to build boats, and basically creates a mini civilization. And since he's there for 25 years, not only does he create a little city, but he's also like, hey guys, if your city gets too big, just split up. So then he has 12, by the time he gets saved, 12 towns that have, a couple hundred people are spread out. All now know how to make boats, go fishing, do iron making, make soap, all this stuff. And they're like, wow, you did a good job, but let's get home. Go back to where we were. They get back to the rug. And Jeannie, because she is a speaker for the computer, that was the whole role, the whole reason she was made, learns, hey, so the time that you know that you came from doesn't exist. They're like, what do you mean? They're like, well, when we went back in time, you then changed the timeline. And you figure out that there's the original timeline that they came from. They jump back in time. When they jumped forward to get out, they went back to the same time and place, but the timeline had changed at that point. So then it was a new possible world that Jeannie and Chester had gotten into. Then when Chester ran away and he said, computer, take me out of there, the computer then again tried to take him home. So it was the same time and it was the same place, but the world was vastly different because at that point it had been years had gone by for Case, and he had made such an impact that the whole world was different. So it was 3 different timelines, even though it was the same time and place. And they're trying to figure out, how can we get back to the time we know And they're like, where's even the computer? And apparently the computer made itself a little time bubble. And they're like, hey, you know how you have all the information about the time we came from? Can you show us, that? I'm like, oh yeah, we can show you the world that you came from. So, it showed like a TV screen. Like, let's make it more real. And they get the computer, using its advanced computer technology, to recreate the world. And they're like, make it more real, make it more real. And makes the computer re-actualize the world that they came from. They go back there, at which point, all of their experiences of these other worlds are there, but the worlds themselves then become I believe they call it psychosomatic imagination. The world they were in, they had some issues because the IRS was coming for them. And they're like, hey, computer, can you fix the whole IRS situation? The computer's like, sure. So the computer sends some letters giving all the information, both to the IRS and to some other company. The other company then says, hey, for use of this computer, we'll pay you all the money to pay off your IRS debt, plus a bunch of extra money as well. And they're like, great, we'll take it. And so now this company has access to the computer. They have enough money to save their whatever sideshow, or if they don't want to, they don't have to anymore. Because Chester now is 10 months training to become a Superman, and Case is now 25 years older. And for whatever reason, they realize the genie is actually, because of DNA stolen, the computer took from Case. Is now, computer says we're just going to go and create an actual human, so it's not an android, it's an actual human that somehow is connected to the computer, who is kind of like a sister, kind of like a child of Case. And then Chester basically says, I'm gonna marry Jeannie, even though he's only known, sure, he knew Jeannie and then was taken away for 10 months, but Jeannie had only known him for, at this point, a day or two. But they get engaged. And that's where the story ends. The Great Time Machine Hoax. Is it a hoax? I don't know that it's a hoax exactly. I don't know who was playing a hoax on anyone. But all this time that they went to, none of those timelines actually exist, so maybe that's a hoax. The cover has nothing at all to do with it. But overall, it was a great story. It's weird. Multiple realities that then existed, but then popped out of existence because the computer actualized the world that they had come from. How the computer became sentient, no one knows. How it learned how to do time machine is because it knew all the information in the world, which apparently makes time travel, and I don't know. So, overall, this was a great book. Doesn't really have themes. I don't know that I'd call it a piece of literature, but it's a great story. And that's all I got for you. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you don't like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Alrighty. Have a good day.